Hello, I'm Jester Borris with I Want to Be a GM, and welcome to D&D Through the Ages Part 2, The Cleric. Be sure to like this video. To ensure that you don't miss any of our future videos, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications by clicking the bell icon. In the comments section, let us know some of your favorite times playing a cleric, or some of the times that a cleric in your party got himself in over his head. If you'd like to find the places where we hang out, be sure to check the social links in the video description. In particular, we've got a fairly active Discord, and so if you'd like to join the growing community of game masters over there, you can hop onto Discord and share your best tips, tricks, and stories. We'd love to have you. So join myself, Roy the Planescape guy, Gwydion the Long-Winded, as we go through the ages with the cleric in D&D. Just remember to look at the top one.
In a world where only clerics exist. Take it over.
Well, maybe in a video where only clerics exist.
Well, yeah.
Because this video is I Want to Be a GM's Through the Ages Part 2, The Cleric. I'm Jester Borris. This with me here is
Gwydion the Long-Winded.
And to my right,
Troy the Planescape guy.
So, maybe we're not in a world, but let me mute that. My mistake. We're going to be covering Cleric in 3rd edition, 4th edition, and Pathfinder, which was a system that came out of the revised 3rd edition. 3rd edition was really cool in that we had the open game license, so there was a lot of official Wizards of the Coast supplements, as well as a lot of third-party supplements to help you expand the game. Particular supplements that were official, that helped Cleric in particular, were expansions to Prestige classes, the Book of Exalted Deeds, the Book of Vile Darkness, and a whole slew of other things. Forgotten Realms expansions, Ravenloft came back pretty big.
Lots more magic items.
Oh, magic items went through the roof because of the high magic world of Faerun coming in as the standard now for Dungeons and Dragons in 3rd edition. So
there was a huge expansion of monsters as well and subclasses, even when it came to dragons. And just about everything, and they would lay out minions, and that was really exciting in 3.
Yeah, so I enjoyed 3 from a character customization standpoint. They took the Unarched Arcana and then the skills from 2nd edition, and really I think made that sort of the central focus. 3rd edition does have some detractors saying the game's broken. And, you could build a character that could crit on a 12 to a 20. It made it a little difficult, but a lot of fun. Looking here at Cleric, we're back to Cleric. In 2nd edition, we were Priest. So if I can get my screen to cooperate here.
I wouldn't.
Wow. All right.
That was interesting.
Yeah, so we maintain the D8 hit points as your base for Cleric in 3rd edition. I think since they've changed that, it's been the same. Clerics, again, can use heavy armor weapons by preference of their deity, but we lose the racial restrictions. As I mentioned before, 3rd edition didn't matter what race your character was. You could take any class without penalty. That's partly due to Faerun coming in as the world standard. They had a lot more freedom in Faerun than we saw in things like Greyhawk or even the Lord of the Rings sort of influences of the other earlier editions.
But unlike 1.0, you did have minimums to qualify.
Oh yeah. So
in certain aspects, and of course 1.0 did the ODD did have some recommended minimums and so on, that you had to be this for this and so on like that, but they expanded that a little bit in 3.
Yeah, one of the things, so if you were a dex-based character, but you still wanted to be able to do certain things that had a strength focus, you'd have a minimum of 13 strength. And if you're doing a point buy or even rolling stats, trying to hit a 13 in strength while boosting your dex as high as possible could make balancing the rest of your stats kind of tricky.
You were able to take a skill, or a feat, that allowed you to be a finesse fighter, which used your dexterity instead of your strength. And these are some of the exciting changes that gave us more expansion on the characters that we used and the races and some of the rolls that we made that kind of sucked. But if you were a raw roller.
So clerics still stick with one spell at base, but in third edition we've added domains, or expanded really domains. They were a feature of second edition, but third edition took domains and expanded them heavily. So as a first level cleric, you get one spell for being a first level cleric, and you also get one spell that's specific to the domain that you choose. So you'll actually end up with 2 spells if you're a healing focused cleric. Now you've got 2 cure light wounds, and the change to the way hit points calculated means that you weren't always picking up your wizard buddy. It was probably your wizard buddy and your elf or your thief buddy.
So the domain expansion, I think, is in keeping with what they did in second edition with the magic user, because they had the different schools. You had conjuring, alteration, evocation. They had all the different schools of magic, and if you were a magic user, you specialized in a school. Your spells at your specialty were more powerful. Things that were from a counter school were more effective against you. I think they did that same type of thing with or that same concept.
Yeah, similar.
Clerics.
So, you're a cleric, you can take cure light wounds, but if you're a cleric, again, as Ares, the war domain had specific things that you could pick up that were separate from the nature domain. And again, it added theme and flavor to cleric. It also allowed some of the game masters to separate some of the deity elements from the game and focus more on a mechanical, if you didn't want to include those themes in your campaign. So this was kind of nice in that regard.
It made it less religious and more game-like.
Yeah. So
I think.
no, it definitely.
I agree.
Third edition again, cap as followed with second. We have a 20 level maximum, and we're still able to use so feats and talents is what they ended up with. We get light armor and medium armor. A fighter will get light, medium, and heavy. So
Now the skills were introduced in were those introduced in 3, or was that 3.5 in Pathfinder?
I think that was more 3.5 in Pathfinder, because we get so talents were things that were more the skills. So you get like evasion or bonuses to tracking, favored enemies for rangers. All that came out as talents. And so you have like the stealth talent tree and the this sort of thing. Then feats were more generalized: weapon proficiency, armor proficiency, point blank shot, aim. Those sorts of things were feats that were accessible to everybody.
To be honest with the audience, I played. We stayed in 2.5 because we were so invested in it. We had worlds, and we had all these people. And so by the time that we started 3, Pathfinder came out, and we're like, "Ooh, look at this!" We were magpies, shiny, and went after it, and then started picking that up, and that's when we changed over to what 3.0 does, which is we're now doing the D20 system. We're no longer on THAC0. And by the way, for those that were here for the first of it, the original armor class of a Will-O-Wisp and Wisp form was -8. And that was like the worst thing to try to hit, or the best armor that you could put on got you down to -8 in 1.0.
You could skin and wear a will-o-wisp?
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking.
No,
man.
I think that was adamantine armor, that sort of thing.
Unobtainium?
Yeah, unobtainium.
How many
That's right.
will-o-wisp would take to make a shirt?
I don't know if I want to skin Wolverine to make armor out of it.
So
Come back.
that's right.
Let me
keep
pull up
making it.
some of the changes that they made for Turn Undead. We're still in the D20, but they did make some changes here thematically. Got some issues with my driver here.
I'll get this.
Oh, no.
Is that better?
So it's turn or rebuke, and so you can do. Now we're running into some of the themes, mechanics that we find in 5th edition: times per day, rests, durations, and things like that. So we've got 3 times per day, plus your charisma modifier, and you can increase this number by taking the extra turning feat. That gives you an extra use. So if you had 1 use per day, you could take the feat. Now you've got 2 uses per day. Pretty straightforward, but it costs you a feat slot. So for making the check, the first thing you do is roll a 1d20, and then you get your charisma modifier. compare that to the DC or difficulty class required for that particular monster, and that's how you do that. One of the things here is that if you are able to turn an undead, you can roll 2d6 plus your cleric level plus your charisma modifier for damage. And so that's one of the other things that third edition introduced a lot of bonuses, which meant a lot of math.
Hey, go back through that again. I'm trying to do the math in my head, and I think I skipped the dice.
Okay, so we're gonna. I'm a level 1 cleric. Third edition, I want to turn a skeleton.
Okay.
I can do that 3 plus my charisma modifier. If I have a 10, that's 0. So I got 3 chances or 3 attempts a day to start with as a level 1 cleric. Say I roll and I succeed, and now I do damage because I'm channeling holy power at an undead creature.
Okay, so you successfully made the turn, and now the creature takes damage.
Correct.
Okay.
As part of that, and is also going to leave my presence as fast as it can. So the damage is, where to go? 2d6 plus your cleric level, which in this example would be 1, plus my charisma modifier. So if a 10 charisma level 1 cleric only gets a 2d6 plus 1. Yeah.
So what we see here in third edition,
Yeah.
this is new, because you do not anywhere before this hear about actually causing damage to the undead creature as you're doing the turn. Begone, vile creature, from my presence. Return to the depths of hell from whence it came. And then they take damage.
Right. There was
Before
a
they just left.
well, there was a
left for a
destroy.
period of time.
Well, right, and then you could get to
And they
the
could come
as a
back.
more powerful cleric. Certain low hit dice monsters would just be destroyed,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
anything that wasn't destroyed fled. So in this, you could
So if we do enough damage to them, they can be destroyed. And if we successfully turn them, they're going to leave with damage.
correct, and so that's the bonus here where you get damage based on your character level. A 10th level cleric will get plus 10, so do 2d6 plus 10 plus his charisma modifier. And so certainly lower hit dice skeletons and undead of that will be destroyed in the presence of a higher level cleric. But the vampire, he'll still take damage now. He's not completely impossible, but probably has his own defenses and things against that sort of thing.
Okay. Doesn't make any mention there. A first level cleric attempting to turn a vampire, which is a 9 hit die monster.
Yes.
Okay, which up to this point has been completely impossible for a first level to do.
Yeah. So give me a second.
Does a first level
The most
cleric
Have a
powerful,
chance.
the most powerful level. So there's this table on, and they didn't put the page numbers on the thing here.
So it's
Down
at a
below.
minus.
So it's 159 in Player's Handbook for 3rd edition. So based on your turning check. So if you're roll a d20 plus your charisma modifier on a 10 to 12, you can turn a monster that's your same hit dice level or lower. So if you're a level 1 cleric and it's a level 9 hit die vampire,
Yep.
you would have to make a check of impossible. So even at a 22 or higher at first level, you can turn up to a 5 hit dice or up to a CR5 undead monster with an incredibly good check.
If the dice are
Yeah.
with me that night.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's incredibly lucky. But typically, you're going to be able to see cleric's level plus 1 for most turn checks. So it's still relatively balanced. We're dealing a little bit of damage, so some combat utility there. Added to already a good combat class.
Which is why these first level characters think they can take on Strahd.
Well,
Once.
Once if the dice are with you that night.
But a lot of changes. We've talked about Turn Undead in the previous editions. Completely different. We're still on a
Completely different.
D20, but now we're dealing damage. We've got qualifiers for the type of undead or how powerful an undead we can even begin
And
to
your
look at.
limitations.
Yeah.
Because it started out needing 2 die 6 and had to get a 7. Then in
Mhm.
first edition we had to get a 10 on a die 20. Now this is taking on a whole new animal.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it from level appropriate encounters, you were still fairly capable.
Mhm.
But if you had things that were above your grasp, you could get beat up pretty quickly.
Yay.
Yeah, everyone likes getting beat up really quickly.
I like getting beat. No, never mind.
Never mind.
Never mind.
Usually you have to pay double for that kind of action.
Oh, you do.
So let me find lost my bookmark on the what was it? Cure Light Wounds.
Kids, don't do
Pure light
drugs.
wounds.
No, go
Don't,
ahead.
don't do jobs.
What was
Well, one of the things. So, Gwydion, let's compare this side by side. You've got Pathfinder. Is that first or second edition Pathfinder?
this is first.
So that's the one that's almost a direct descendant from third edition.
Yeah.
And you've got the Cleric there for Pathfinder first edition.
Yeah. So with the Cleric, they add skills. Now, skills is something that everybody has, but it's based off your intelligence. We're used to playing with wisdom and charisma, so on and so forth. With the Cleric and Pathfinder, there's no more turn. There is channel energy. So you can channel positive energy, 2d6, and use that either to heal the party in a 30-foot radius, or you can use it to attempt to harm undead with a DC, depending on what your character's attributes are and so on like that, and their level. Then you can attempt to harm undead. There is additions that can be done by magical items. If you wear a phylactery of channeling, then you get to add 2 more dice on top of that. So a low level, here it is right around, your channel energy is 1d6 as a first level. If you have found that phylactery, some miracle, you would have 3d6 to go against undead or to heal your people that's within a 30-foot. At third level, it goes to 2d6. Fifth level, so it's every other level, it comes up 1. There's the big change there. You're not really looking to make them go away. I believe there is a turn. It's just nobody ever uses it. It's like, let's destroy them. Let's
Get them off of the
beat
battle.
them up.
Yeah.
Let's get them off the battlefield. Let's get them out of the dungeon, whatever we're doing. They're never turning unless there's a plethora, and then it's one of those things where if we can turn half of them and then injure these to where everybody else can take the rest of them out. I believe there is a turn. Honestly, we haven't used it because I'm not an evil DM. I don't sick 200 skeletons on character. Well, when you come over to play, you know.
One of the things that's interesting to note regarding the similarities is that Pathfinder clerics also have domains.
So what I was going to mention is when I play a cleric in this, I always take the fire domain because everybody's like, hey, I'm a wizard, I can throw fireball. You're just a cleric. Well, with a fire domain, you actually get fireball. Now, here's the difference in, you have domain spells.
Yeah. I cast fireball. Oh, I also cast fireball.
You also cast fireball. What? So, you have domain spells, and you have your regular spells. So, domain spells come from your deity. So, that's where you pick a deity domain, fire domain, and you pick a deity with that, like Sarenrae, which is a good deity. And you're granted powers. So with your starting character, along with your starting spells that you pick out, your deity says, and you can have firebolt. And as you come up in levels, they're like, okay, now I'll let you have fireball. And it just keeps progressing. So you get a domain spell as well as your regular spells, and those are cast once per day. And are generally reclaimed after a long rest, whereas regular spells, depending on the spell, you can regain after a short rest, certain spell slots, and then long rest, gain them all. Yeah. That's also the other aspect, is they call them spell slots in 5th edition.
Yeah, because you've got basically a table that you lay out. One of the things that's nice about Pathfinder is they had 3rd edition. Then you may know about 3.5, where they went through and made a lot of revisions. And then there was even further revisions to rebalance classes. They cut down the ridiculously long skills list. So you had search, spot, listen, and that all became perception. You know, you had all this other stuff. So they pared it down quite a lot, and you got this rebalance. And that's what moved forward into Star Wars Sagas Edition, which is what I run, Pathfinder First Edition, and a few other game systems. So there's a lot of similarities. But as we continue forward in D&D, you'll see where they start to take this and change it out as well. So one of the add-ons for 3rd edition was essentially a cantrip level spell for clerics that they call Horizons. And then so you got Cure Minor Wounds, which is different than the Cure Light Wounds that we've been looking at. Cure Minor Wounds cures 1 point of damage, which can be really handy if you're trying to stop bleeding or bring somebody back up from being unconscious or something of that nature. And as a 0 level spell,
Or you have to cast all your other spells.
Right, it's very easy. So, Cure Light Wounds at this point, 1d8 plus 1 per level to a maximum of 5.
Wow.
So, instead of the 1d8 plus 1, we got 1d8 plus up to 5.
Plus up to 5. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. That change has been made because you'll see that 3rd edition characters end up with larger hit point pools. And so the healing will scale with your healers. Potions don't, but then healing spells become a little bit more potent, which is kind of nice.
The Horizons are also called 0 level, so where they call them cantrips in 5e, these are just 0 level spells, which means doesn't cost any, but you only get so many a day.
Yeah, it's very limited.
To choose from. You get 3 spells a day out of your Horizons, and Create Water actually goes up with your levels. So many gallons per level of pure water, and there's a lot of fun things that you can do with that. Detect Magic, of course, Light, which everybody uses, Mend, and what's the other one? The repair. It's not repair. It's
we usually use Mending and Prestidigitation.
No, there was a Mending and one that make whole.
Like reforms broken objects.
Yeah, if somebody messes their armor up, and you've got a cleric that's got Mending that he can help you guys out in between. If you've got a campaign like
when the
his that
orc barbarian gets
armor,
a spear through his chest, and then the
just
cleric has
please don't go there. There's a long story behind that, and we're not getting into it right now. Thank you, St. Cuthbert.
But scar on its back from the front.
Yeah. Like
he did that to him.
Prepare. Needs to prepare. 0 level campaigns, you gotta love them.
Yeah.
He ran at the guy. He was scared.
Wow, totally lost my train of thought. And that's it for clerics.
Yeah,
thanks for tuning in. No, the talking about the 0 levels, those started becoming powerful in Pathfinder. And when you get to 5e, you'll see what happens to cantrips from 0 level Horizons there. But mending, minor repairs on an object, so if somebody gets a little crack in their wand and is fizzling, or a 1d6 is now random instead of a 6-die fireball, it's random 1d6, it can be mended. Make whole. Those things aren't used enough, and I encourage anyone that's GMing out there, start messing with things and injuring them, because if they get hit with stuff, if they're not actually hit, maybe some of their stuff is, and there's some damage there. So we've got a whole deal on that later. But the read magic, of course, and resistance. So some of these little things can really help.
Yeah, Cleric, as for is if you've been playing 5th edition, 3rd edition Cleric is kind of what you've come to know at this point. And I've really enjoyed the changes in from 3rd into 5th edition for Cleric.
So tell me some of the things that the relationship between a cleric and their deity.
He
mentioned
favorite weapon.
Right.
They have basically what they call a portfolio. So like Aristotle is a god of farming, hunting, trade, and family. Their domain is animal, community, good, law, and plant. Their favored weapon is longbow. So all of these things make up your character. So if these are things that you like, if you're a half elf or an elf and are already proficient with a longbow, this would be a great favored weapon to add to your arsenal that your deity actually approves of. And with everything else that you're doing, plus your alignment, there's things that start stacking, and that's what we're talking about when you come to 3, is your stacking. You can start stacking aspects. You can start stacking. In the past, it's just been magical items that stack on abilities. Now, the decisions you make in starting your character, the decision you make in the feats that you choose, and the skills that you check off and start putting points to, stacks your character's abilities, stacks their health, stacks their damage, stacks their recovery.
One of the things that's nice about that is you can have 2 fighters or 2 clerics, and again, they're completely different.
Yeah.
But for different reasons in 3rd edition or Pathfinder than what we found in 2nd edition. So, similar idea here, where we've got Cord, God of Strength, who's a chaotic good, with a domain of chaos, good, luck, and strength, whose typical worshippers are fighters, barbarians, rogues, and athletes. So slightly different in terms of the profile they give you, but we've got similar ideas, similar concepts in play, in the mechanics, in the lore that's provided as part of the player's handbook for character creation.
When you look at your 3 right there and what they're recommending, when you come up to Pathfinder, they don't give you those recommendations of character class.
No, so
they leave. This is when they start leaving it open to anybody can do that. If you want to start using a glaive or a rapier,
sure,
and you happen to be this, then go ahead.
Deities themselves are covered in more depth later in the book, so this is just the table straight out of the class description, and they're not mentioning favored weapons, armor restrictions, or those other things that we've seen as part of the cleric class in previous editions.
Pathfinder wanted more books to print, so they picked it back up.
Pathfinder does have a prodigious amount of books.
They do.
But they're a lot of good content. If you guys haven't seen Pathfinder, there's a ton of stuff to borrow from, even if you don't want to jump over to that game system. Really good. And having shared a root with D&D 3.5 and 3.0, fairly portable too. So it doesn't take a lot of work to take it, bring it over to 5th edition, and make it function really well.
Yes.
As a DM, I would highly encourage looking at all your favorite stories, movies, books, even crazy stories told by your friends at work. You can take any of those as a root idea to turn into a great night of gaming.
Yeah.
I will mention that 3rd edition breaks out Druid as a separate class instead of a subclass. So it's understood as a separate class completely.
Oh, okay.
Which is, as we get to 5th edition, you'll see a lot of the things that it does that are the same but different. It has its root as a subclass that we saw 1st, 2nd edition. 3rd edition broke it out and tried a little bit to differentiate them, where we've got more of a nature or naturalist focus and more of a divinity or faith focus in the cleric and paladin.
One of the interesting things about Pathfinder is when they talk about a character, they use the term she a lot in this.
It happens in 3rd edition.
Instead of he or whatever, they now go to she. I think it's just for balance.
Partially, but
partially, and there's.
It was nice to see because it allowed people to understand that your character can be anything, and anybody can be a hero.
Yep.
So it was nice.
Cleric, typical. And they do actually have that figurine, which is freaking awesome as a fig. And then you go to a druid.
Yeah.
They've got that. So yeah, it was a nice change. It was nice to read. It took a moment to get used to it. And it's like, oh yeah, that's cool.
One of the things that's interesting is I hadn't compared before. The druid spells per day, they're back to 1 spell at 1st level as a druid. But the cleric picked up that extra domain spell.
Yeah.
So the cleric is like, he's getting boosted. The druid, they finally made it its own class, but they're like, that's all you get this time.
Yeah, see, with a cleric, you'll see 1 + 1.
Right,
and that's one spell,
and
1 domain spell.
Yep.
And going all the way through, you never get more than 1 domain spell added to each level.
Yeah, the tiers that you get
in the tiers. So at what is it? About 3rd level, you have 2 regular spells, 1 domain, but then you get 1 second level spell and a second level domain spell. So they don't take up slots or anything like that. So you just have a first level domain, Firebolt, and a second level domain, Fireball to shoot or whatever it happens to be, in addition to your spells. So I like that because it just gave clerics extra spells.
Okay. Well, let's take a look real quick at 4th edition.
Okay, and that's it for 4th. Let's go on.
4th edition was sort of short-lived and got, I think, it didn't quite hit the spotlight at the time. Wizards of the Coast had their miniatures system that they were coming out with. This rule set was meant to be compatible with that, which was kind of cool if you were doing a lot of table battles. We talked a lot about chainmail and those sorts of systems that were, the progenitor of D&D back in the 70s. So, Dad, you've got Cleric there. Do we've got hit dice right off?
No, I didn't.
It's over here.
Over there?
Yeah,
hit points per level gained is 5. So they just told you get 5 hit points per level.
Yeah, again...
healing surges per day, 7 plus your constitution modifier.
Hold on. Are you looking at the same?
Yeah, he's over there.
It says hit points at first level 12 plus constitution.
So we're not rolling dice anymore.
This
We've
is
got
constitution score, not bonus.
Yeah, so if you had a 12, that's 24. So that's
And
quite a
then-
powerful
and then
character
hit points
relative.
per level gained was 5. So I was on page 2.
Well, same page, line 2, but
So
yeah,
I start out with,
12 plus constitution.
yeah.
and
So
the next level I get 5.
Yeah,
Correct.
and the level after that you get 5.
so that's 100 hit points at level 20,
Yeah.
plus 12, plus your Constitution score. Which your Constitution score is probably increased. So one of the features of 3E was at 4, 8, 12, and 16 and 20.
Well, I can tell you guys right now. Okay, level 20, I'm going to have to be how old?
How old are you?
Well, let's just say that's 20 years from now.
Yeah, I get you.
The way my knees and back feel right now, I'm not going to be doing shit at 20th level.
But it's apparently going to take a lot for that orc to beat you to death.
Yeah, no. Or come in here now and
Hold on,
scare
wait a
me
minute,
to
wait a
death.
minute. You look at martial arts masters, and even though they're old,
Older,
and,
yeah.
and so on like that,
They're still fit and
they know how to block, and we're just doing one shots, folks. That's all we need. We're just doing a one shot.
it's good. It's good. So this system was, 5th edition is quite a bit more epic than 1st and 2nd. So 5th edition is actually a little bit of a step backwards from this.
Yeah.
One of the complaints that people have is there's not enough realism in a game that we go and fight orcs and stuff in. So certainly large hit point pools, the healing surges per day. As we looked that up, it's your cure light wounds does as much as a healing surge, which basically brings you back up to your total hit point pool for the time being.
And after a short rest, you get that back. You get so many healing surges. They introduced what's called a bloodied value, which is basically at half of your maximum hit points rounded down. You were bloodied, and your current hit points dropped to a bloodied value or lower. That was considered bloodied. And certain powers and effects work only against bloodied enemies or work better. And in some cases on your character, some of your powers or something didn't work as well. And they were trying to make a little bit of realism in here.
Right, give you some danger in
Instead of
combat.
you got 1 hit point, you jump back up and you go run in and fight. Somebody slaps you and you die. They were trying to bring, like I say, some more realism into it. The number of healing surges that you could have per day, the value. They talked about monsters and NPCs and what their healing surges could do. They had different tiers, heroic tiers,
Right.
and so on. That was introduced. I had a group. We tried this for a year and really couldn't get it to work, and found that it was more trying to bring a video game to tabletop gaming was our opinion.
Right, that's how you felt about it.
And was our opinion, and it just didn't work for us, and we went back to Pathfinder, but we gave it a year, and it just didn't work for us.
Yeah, other features. So
There's people out there that are playing it and loving it.
Oh, yeah.
And I need to see it played from their standpoint because maybe we were just playing it wrong.
Could be, but again, more epic. Turn Undead was another thing. Is that quite a bit different than what we had before?
It is crazy a lot different.
Yeah, so fourth edition is where we
I can't make sense of it.
Well, we get the terminology for channel divinity, and you'll see that in fifth edition's cleric and paladin. For channel divinity, it's how some of their abilities work, and that totally makes sense.
I'm good with that. That's great.
So here we go. It takes a standard action, so typical action economy is your quick, move, and standard.
Sure. I'm old.
So target each undead creature in a burst. So close, burst 2. So imagine that's a 4 square.
Yeah.
So a 2x2 square. Attack is wisdom versus willpower. And on a hit, you do 1d10 plus your wisdom modifier radiant damage. So they've got damage classes, right? Fire, ice, lightning.
Now they're working
radiant.
with radiant like they put into 5th edition.
Yep, and that's carried forward. And you push the target a number of squares, so that actually moves the creature. Number of squares equal to 3 plus your charisma modifier. So minimum of 3 typically, I guess. I wouldn't expect that a cleric's going to have less than a 10 in the system. Target is immobilized until the end of your next turn. So a little bit different than Turn Undead. It's just, it kind of moves them, does some damage.
And for all intents and purposes, paralyzes them for a turn and allows everybody else
to pile on.
Yeah, to pile on their turn and then the very next turn.
But wait, there's more.
There's more.
So, since it's a radius, so like an area attack, basically, on a miss, you deal half damage, and the target is not pushed back or immobilized.
Yeah.
In this game system, important to note, evasion moves that scale back down. So on a hit, you take half, and on a miss, you take 0. Evasion is super OP. Grab it every time. But damage increases based on character level, and that was something else to mention. We've got up to 25th level in the book, and I know there's expansion of the epic level campaigns that we saw in 3rd edition came in the 4th for character levels 40 to 50. So really high power campaigns and stuff like that kind of ended up being a feature in 4th edition.
They basically gave you 2 choices on a cleric, on creating one: a battle cleric and a devoted cleric, and that was it. After that, it was all the aspects of a cleric and the little changes that you made, but they even made suggestions on feats, skills, at-will powers, which you see on cards in some card games as an at-will power, encounter power, daily power. You see a lot of this in the board games. If you have some of the D&D board games, which I think I've got almost all of them, you see that on those little cards where it's got power and at will and so on like this that you get to go. And that's fun for the board game. It just didn't translate here for us. But this like I say, they have the suggestions on the daily powers. That's where this was all introduced, was the at will and the daily power, and those coming back, and so on.
Yeah.
Plus the regular cleric spells.
So, and Cure Light Wounds.
They still had really deities in here. They changed to where they had good, lawful, good, and unaligned deities as one block. And then they had evil and chaotic as another block. So they separated those there.
So when you cast Cure Light Wounds, the effect is that the target regains hit points as if it had spent a healing surge themselves. So the cleric got 7 to use, and then I guess if you run out, it's time for Cure Light Wounds. Standard action, so it would take your attack. You could still move. You could move over to your buddy. Cure Light Wounds, the melee touch range, and the target is you or one creature. So the healing surge. This is getting to be like
Pathfinder. Go on, say it.
No. Well, I've got to flip all these pages. I think I'm back in the white box. So
it's all in the same book anyway.
Yeah, I did it. Regeneration. So, you restore lost hit points to your current hit point total. So that doesn't say maximum.
Healing surges, healing surge.
Right, your class and constitution of value. When you spend a healing surge, you regain 1/4 of your maximum hit points. So that can be quite a lot if I have 100 hit points. I just healed you for 25. Way stronger than the 1d8 plus 5 even out of 3rd edition.
Oh yeah.
When you reach 11th level, you had the opportunity to choose a Paragon path. Now, they've got a lot of different paths that you can do in
5th edition?
5th edition and so on like that. So at 11th level, you then pick a Paragon path. The prerequisite is just to have the, Cleric as your class. And you go with Angelic Avenger, Divine Oracle, and so on. And again, it's limited to like the 2 areas that you first start with. I mean, there's only basically 3 pages or 2.5 pages of Paragon paths, and they're done. And it gets into fighter.
Yeah, when they got rid of prestige classes, we ended up with this pathing, which I think has been implemented more successfully in 5th edition. Unearthed Arcana, Xanathars, both expanded player options for 5th edition characters quite a lot. And if you aren't using those books in your game, you might find some resources. Check out the SRDs and see if you like any of that, because it'll make a big difference in your players' ability to have a character that they really connect with. And particularly when you're dealing with some of the divine, like clerics, paladins, and those sorts of cross-class things that happen in 5th edition as well.
And then support your local gaming store and go by there and buy it.
Exactly. So that is going to be Cleric in 3rd and 4th editions. We're going to take another quick break. When we come back, before we finalize, we're going to be in 5th edition. And then we're going to talk to you a little bit. We're going to tell some stories about the times we enjoyed most when playing a Cleric.
Or hated.
So it's sure to be a good time. Again, I'm Jester Borris.
I'm Gwydion the Long-Winded.
I'm Troy, the Planescape guy.
And we are I Want to Be a GM. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Discord, and Twitch. And we'll be right back.
What he said.